A report from the Nippon Dynawave paper mill in Longview is revealing new details about how workers responded to the deadly chemical spill back in May. The incident left 11 people dead and several others injured.
Fox 12's McKenna Marks joins us now live in studio with the latest on that report. McKenna?
Yeah, that spill happened after a massive tank full of hundreds of thousands of gallons of a chemical called white liquor imploded. This new report walks us through some of the tough choices employees at the mill had to make as they responded to the emergency. On May 26th, a chemical tank of white liquor, a chemical used to break down wood into pulp, imploded at the Nippon Dynawave Packaging paper mill in Longview. The breach triggered a massive chemical spill, and in a new report from Nippon, we're learning more about how employees responded to the emergency. When the tank inside the mill imploded, it released 900,000 gallons of white liquor. According to the report, the incident also damaged a nearby fire main, which added to the volume of spilled material. Employees took immediate action, and the report details how they had to decide between diverting the flow of spilled material and intermittently shutting off a series of pumps to control the spill. But both options resulted in flooding and contamination of the nearby area. At its peak, the report says the flooded area covered 12 acres.
Our members did what they're trained to do, and they did their job.
Josh Estes, a spokesperson for the Association of Western Pulp and Paper Workers, said despite their training, an emergency situation of this scale is not something you can prepare for.
The tragedy as it is not really a circumstance that you can really specifically train for, but all things considered, our members did what they were supposed to do and took action, and I think that's what's important.
According to the report, as of June 23rd, most of the areas that were impacted by the spill have been decontaminated. And Estes says as more information about the incident comes to light, it will likely change the way crews respond to emergency situations like this one.
There's always opportunity to learn from an incident, and in any case, take everything that we learn and utilize that and move that forward to improve the operational efficiency and safety of the workers and the facilities that operate in this industry.
According to Nippon, the cause of the tank failure has not yet been identified. In its report, Nippon said it is fully cooperating with the U.S. Chemical Safety Board and Washington State Labor and Industries as that investigation continues. Reporting live in studio, McKenna Marks, Fox 12 Oregon.